everyone, this is Melissa Kerner from friendyourbody.com, and today I'm here with the motivating and inspiring Paul Boynton. Paul is a man who wears many hats. He is currently the CEO of the Moore Center in Manchester, New Hampshire. He hosts his own television and radio show. He writes a column for the New Hampshire Business Review. He's created his own meditation CD, and he is the author of a wonderful book called Begin with Yes. And today, Paul is going to share some principles as to how you can live a more fulfilling life, live the life that you truly want to be living, and he'll offer some tips as to how you can overcome some of the challenges and obstacles in your life that are sort of holding you back from achieving your dreams. How was that?
That was awesome. As I listened to you, I was thinking, I should say no more.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the concept of reality shifting. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of how you start your book, and you talk about how leading a good life isn't so much about having just a positive mindset, but it's really about taking positive action. And you talk about how when someone is sort of in a not so positive place, to shift that, they need to turn their power switch on, I believe you called it. Shift their thinking or redirect their thinking so that they're in a more positive place and they can take positive action steps. So we all have moments where life is great and it's easy to make positive actions or take positive actions, but there are also times when we get sad, we get anxious, we get angry, we feel hopeless. What do we do when our mind is in that place? So talk about what reality shifting is.
Yeah, I think reality shifting, well, first of all, we need to begin to think of reality as just a product of our imagination, first of all. So what we think of and what we pass off to the rest of the world as real is really just our perception of what is real. And then we turn that into what we think is fact when it's actually just how our mind has created or reacted to the circumstances. So I always say, since we're creating our realities, why not create one that's more fun or better than one that we have?
Right.
Now that's not to in any way take away from the difficult stretches that people have in their lives, and I've certainly had my own. And if you live long enough, everybody has, certainly we all have difficult days. Sometimes it turns into difficult weeks, months, and even difficult years.
Yeah.
So even the most optimistic person, it would be silly, I think, for an optimistic person to be optimistic without paying attention to some of the realities that are in their life. So Begin with Yes is grounded in reality. It says, yes, I do have a toothache. It doesn't ask you to pretend that your toothache isn't real. But what it asks you to do is to, first of all, acknowledge that you have a toothache, but then say, my favorite question is, now what? What do I do? And it's that now what question that seems to move me and other people into action, because then you've sort of moved to a place of action. As soon as you ask now what, you do get an answer. It's like call the dentist, take a couple of aspirin, and get an appointment to have your teeth worked on. And then let's say you don't have money to go to the dentist. Then you say, now what? Okay. And so you just keep throwing out that question, now what, until you can find an action step. And I think the most important, Begin with Yes is actually a very simple book. It's not rocket science, and I think that's one of the reasons people like it so much, because it's easy to read, it's easy to understand, and people say, oh yeah, I sort of knew that already, but they get reminded of it.
It validates certain thoughts.
Yeah, it does validate certain thoughts. And one of the things I talk about a lot is making the steps that we take really, really small, because if you approach any problem or challenge or difficulty or let's say you're in a bad relationship, for example. That's a very complex, difficult situation. Trying to figure out how to, in one step or two or three steps, get to a better place in that relationship, it's just asking too much of yourself. Then you get overwhelmed and you don't do anything. So I say, get those steps down until they're so small that you can do them this morning. And if it's too big to do this morning, then it's too big. So just break it down smaller and smaller and smaller until you actually can do it today. Then you take that action step, whether you feel good, whether you're happy or optimistic, or whether things are going good or things are going not so good. You take that step and you begin actually to feel better, because you're no longer stuck, but you're actually engaged. You're making something happen. And we all feel better when we're moving.
Right. So by changing your behavior, you're changing your thinking.
That's right. And the thinking almost always catches up with you.
Okay.
And the other thing I've discovered is once you're in action, once you're taking steps, you're definitely not stuck anymore. And when you're not stuck, you feel like you're in touch with that sense of power that you have, and then the next step becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So remember that question, the now what, and just ask yourself over and over, now what, now what,
Okay.
now what,
Okay.
and it gets you moving.
So in your book, you talk about the power of surrounding yourself with positive people.
Yes.
And you define positive people who are sort of engaged in life. They have hobbies they enjoy their work. They're typically people you when you're around them, you feel inspired, they sort of energize you. What does someone do if they are surrounded with what I call energy robbers or emotional vampires? How do they sort of start to shift their environment and start to draw more positive people in?
I think that's a great question, and it's never been asked of me. But the answer is pretty simple. It depends upon who those negative people are. If they're casual acquaintances or people that you work with, I just sort of navigate my way away from those people. I just literally, oh, I gotta go, and just move away. But it gets more complicated when the person is your mother or your mother-in-law or your husband or your wife or your sister. And then it gets a little bit more complicated. And that's where the conversation that with my editor, because she thought I was a little harsh in saying, get away, because they really do rob you of your energy and rob you of your life. And so I think that I've sort of mellowed a little bit, and so now what I say is, instead of trying to get away from people who bring you down, try to bring new people into your life that build you up. And sometimes the energy of the person that's bringing you down begins to shift. Unfortunately, sometimes what happens is that they resist and play even harder. And so your job is to make the best of the situation that you're in. And frankly, in some situations, even if they're close family members, you may have to have that conversation with yourself or with a therapist or someone to help you think, is this the kind of energy that you want in your life forever? And so in drastic situations, you may have to actually move away from that. But in the typical everyday kind of negative energy person, just bring more good energy into your life. And the fact is, we all work with people that are, I used Debbie Downer on my Facebook page the other day, and someone from Germany said, who's Debbie Downer?
They don't know the reference.
They didn't know who Debbie Downer was,
SNL.
We're going to have some of those people in our lives, so let's just get more of people who are not like that. And here's something really important. Check yourself too, and make sure that you're not Debbie Downer. Because sometimes if the people around you are drawn to your energy, which may not be the best energy in the world, and you can begin shaking that up a little bit too.
Yeah, that's good advice. I typically, when I'm dealing with an energy robber myself, I always remind myself that I have 3 choices. I can try to leave the situation, change the situation, or change myself in the situation. So it's a matter of just asking yourself, what to do.
Yeah, and sometimes I find that with a little bit of practice, you can not let the energy in. You can let the person go on and on and on and on, and just not allow it to come in.
It's true. It's true. So. You're in control. But I like the idea of adding more positivity in. And I sort of take a similar approach with health and fitness. It's not about eliminating all the bad foods, but adding more healthy stuff in. So it's a similar...
you and I talked about that, and I really like that. Especially if you love all the bad foods.
And you desire less of the bad foods when you have more of the good stuff. So it's a similar relationship.
And I'm sure that with negative people, once you surround yourself with more positive people, your tolerance for being around people that are negative is just like, it's just not there anymore.
Absolutely.
And you know what? Positive people can be annoying to negative people, so they probably don't want to be around us
You
either.
naturally start to they carry away. In your book, you talk about sort of like a simple way to approach goal setting and achieving. We all know that to live a fulfilling life, we need to have dreams and do setting and achieving goals. But what I liked about your approach is that you talk about how it can be sort of intimidating, it can be overwhelming, and sometimes you feel so hopeless because you just don't know where to begin. You say, I want to do this, but I don't think I can, because you're thinking of the 50 steps that it takes to get to that goal. So can you talk a little bit about some simple steps that someone can take to make goal achieving very simple and very practical?
First of all, I'm all for having big dreams. So I'm never telling people downsize your dreams or your goals or what you want to happen in your life. But what I'm constantly trying to bring people back to that place where they say, well, what can I do today? You've got to get it down into those small steps. Let's say somebody, I'll give you a couple of examples. Let's say somebody decides that they want to go back to school. and they're a parent, they've got a couple of kids, they have to work to pay the bills, and that seems like a huge undertaking. So instead of sitting there thinking about all the things that could go wrong and all the reasons why you can't, say, well, given that that's this dream, and given that it's a big one, I get that it's not going to happen overnight, what could I do today that would move me a little tiny bit closer to that dream? And a very logical, easy thing to do is get on the internet, spend 10 minutes, and just find out how many schools in the area have a degree in social work.
Okay.
And that's all you have to do for today. And then you say, well, now what? Well, now you've got a list of 5 schools. What would be the next small thing you could do? You could get on one website and send them an email and ask them to send you a brochure. And so once you start looking at these and taking these small steps, you're actually moving towards your dream. And you're not focused on how big it is, or how intimidating it is, or how overwhelmed you are, which keeps you stuck. You're actually moving. And nothing really significance or any of those big dreams happen overnight for any of us. It's like, if you want to write a book, that just doesn't happen in, a weekend. I mean, maybe it has for some people, but no one that I know. And really, the best way to start writing a book is to write a sentence, and then another sentence. And pretty soon you have a couple of pages. When I wrote Begin With Yes, the first time I showed it to someone, it was 12 pages long. And I got so much good feedback, and they asked so many good questions. And it was many, many, many months before Begin With Yes was done, and there were so many steps along the way. But it did happen by me creating that first paragraph.
Got to start somewhere. I think sometimes we think of a goal, and automatically we think of all the things that could go wrong, or all the things that sort of we fear. If I do this, but this could happen. If I do this, that could happen. We sort of get lost in all the what ifs, and we sort of sabotage ourselves. Sometimes are the biggest things sort of holding us back from achieving our goals? Well,
the biggest thing holding us back is ourselves, first of all, and it's the at some point, and it's at different times, for different people, for different reasons, at some point we stop believing in ourselves and believing that we should pursue our own dreams. We get caught up in life. We get married, we have kids, we have a job, and then we begin to lose sight of what it is that we really want to do. And I'm always sort of feeling like if you're really not in touch with your passion, then you're not in touch with your purpose. And I love that combination of thoughts. And so if you can begin to put a little time and energy, and maybe it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, into something that you're passionate about, you become alive, I think. And then once you're alive, even if it's a little bit more alive than you were yesterday, you just begin to think about life and possibilities in a slightly different way. So I think we actually hold ourselves back. And instead of looking for someone else to blame, ask that question. What can I do?
How would you summarize Begin With Yes in a sentence?
Begin with yes. It's like I used to think that yes was the most important word, but now I know begin is the most important word. So the most important thing about my book is to begin. And I would add to that, people also get very hung up on, well, what if I choose the wrong thing? Or I want to do 10 other things. Well, it's not one. It's not like you don't have to figure it all out. And even if you did, like I'm not into really long-term, like sort of figuring out the next 20 steps, because everything changes. You take this step.
And then the course could go this way, and you're anticipating it to go that way.
You go to the college and you have an interview about becoming a social worker, and you go, oh, I'd rather be a teacher. So it doesn't do much good to have planned out the whole social work strategy. It's like just take it one step at a time, and don't overwhelm yourself.
So if someone wants to learn more about you and Begin With Yes, and they want to order your book, where do they go?
The book is really easy to find. You can order it from any bookstore. The quickest and fastest way to get it is on Amazon. You can get it for your Kindle. At Barnes & Noble, you can get it for your Nook. Order it there. And I would say, if people aren't quite ready to buy the book, just to go on my Facebook page. It's Begin With Yes. I do original materials posted every morning and afternoon.
You've got some great stuff on there.
Thank you. And I've got like over almost 60,000 people from all over the world.
That's awesome.
There's so much good energy.
Awesome.
If you're looking for some good energy, you can simply find the right there.
If you're looking to surround yourself with positive people,
That's
start
right.
with Paul.
Right, and start with the Begin With Yes Facebook page. And I also always tell people, if they can't afford the book right now, or if they're struggling with unemployment, or whatever challenges they have, I always give free downloads to people. So anybody that's listening to that can't afford it, send me an email at beginwithyes@comcast.net. And I'm sure they can find that on your website.
Yes,
and
yes.
I'll give them a code and they can get a free download.
That's very generous of you.
Yeah,
That's
fine.
good to know.
Like
Thank
to get it out
you.
there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. This was great. I could talk to you for hours. So I very much appreciate your time. I hope that you enjoyed this interview. If you did and you'd like to get some more interviews and some health and fitness tips from friendyourbody.com, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you haven't already, go to friendyourbody.com to download your free Get Fit Starter pack. So I look forward to talking with you soon. Have a great day. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was simple, right?
You're easy to talk to. You should have a talk show.
Yeah.